And blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Our phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So the president declares a national emergency, and already 15 states have filed lawsuits against him. Boy, so much for securing the border. We wish we had better news to talk about. Of course, Larry says it's going to snow, so that'll be fun tomorrow. And for those of you that had the President's Day holiday off, welcome back to work as we hit the ground running. Where do we begin? Well, never before in our history have we found out of a presidential coup that didn't take place, and that was the remarks by Andrew McCabe, the disgraced former FBI director, the man who decided that he alone was going to launch the Russian investigation to go after Donald J. Trump. And Andrew McCabe now says the president is bullying him. We'll get your thoughts on that. But to me, as I write it on KIDOTalkRadio.com, this was a coup that didn't plan out. These guys were so desperate. These guys were so mad that President Trump beat Hillary Clinton that they decided to launch this fake, phony, faux Russian investigation. Now, you'll hear this before you can see this. This is from the Today Show, shot earlier today. It won't be on for a couple of hours locally, but we'll have it first. Former Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, sat down with Savannah Guthrie to whine about President Trump.
About the president, you, in some ways, it's almost personal. He's tweeted about you, I think, more than 30 times. In one of the occasions, in one of your conversations that you had that you relay in the book, you say that he referred to your wife and her losing campaign and called her a loser. What would you say to him right now if you had the opportunity?
Well, I don't expect I'll get that opportunity, but I can't tell you, Savannah, how horrific it's been to have to endure the threats, the taunts, the bullying of the President of the United States in such a public way. I try not to take it personally, but it's very hard. It's been incredibly tough on my family. My wife, who is a wonderful person, a pediatric emergency room physician, has tried to help her community by running for office, and then to stand up there in front of thousands of people and perpetuate lies and slander about my wife and our family, it's been absolutely horrific.
Do you have a political bias against the president? Because he suggests, by virtue of the fact your wife running as a Democrat, receiving PAC money from an organization that was essentially controlled by the governor of Virginia, a close ally of the Clintons. Do you have a political bias?
Absolutely not. I did my job.
Now, are we really led to believe that here's a guy who was a lifelong FBI guy, fired a day before he is to get his pension? His wife's running as a Democrat for Congress, helped by Terry McAuliffe, the hatchet man of Bill and Hillary Clinton. You can't tell me, those that have been married a long time or not a long time, that there wasn't some spillover into the McCabe household. And by the way, she was a loser. She lost. She got a ton of money from the DNC, a ton of money from other nefarious sources, and yet here we have the deputy director of the FBI crying and whining about this. Whatever happened to the G-men? Whatever happened to J. Edgar Hoover? Whatever happened to the Elliot Ness and all these folks that took down the bad guys? Have they been replaced by the metrosexuals? But we're talking about a coup. Savannah, ask him about the coup.
Job. I worked on the facts and the law that were in front of us at the time. There's absolutely no connection whatsoever with my wife's political activity and the decisions that I made at work. And I think that's been borne out by an in-depth investigation.
You oversaw the Clinton email investigation. It has subsequently come to light that someone you worked very close with, Lisa Page, who was your lawyer, essentially, and someone else who worked on the case from the Department of Justice were having a romantic affair, an extramarital affair. It also came out in text messages that they had disparaged the president, that they had bashed him, that it demonstrated clear bias against the president. You oversaw that investigation. Did you ever see that kind of thing among Lisa Page and Peter Strzok?
Not once. Not from Lisa Page, not from Pete Strzok, and not from anybody else on that team.
One of their text messages mentions a meeting in Andy's office. Did any kind of conversation like that take place in your hearing?
Okay, so either he's complicit in the Page Strzok extramarital affair, or he's the biggest dope the FBI has ever hired. I guess we have to smile about it because so early in the morning, but this guy claims to be a victim. Now, when you're in the zero tolerance game, okay, let's say you work at one of the fine service departments here in the Treasure Valley, and you miss something. Well, you're held accountable if you miss fixing somebody's brakes. or if you miss the brake fluid leaking, or if you miss the spark plugs aren't working, you're held accountable for that. Your job is to know these things. And yet here we have the deputy director of the FBI. His wife's a big surgeon. Did not know about this romantic affair. Did not know that his subordinates hated the president and were actively working to undermine the presidency. And he says he's nonpartisan? I just don't find him credible.
I don't recall the meeting or the conversation that they relate in their private text. It's a question I've been asked many times. We had many meetings between myself and those two and many others on the investigative team, so I don't recall the conversation they're referring to, but I can tell you this. Lisa Page and Pete Strzok are good people who served this country well. They made some poor decisions in their private lives and in terms of the communications they exchanged with each other. That's brought incredible grief and scrutiny on the FBI.
They're incredibly good people. Tell that to their spouses. And by the way, isn't Andrew McCabe charged with the same thing that Michael Flynn is charged with, lying to Congress? Why isn't he brought up? Oh, well, we don't have a special prosecutor for him. Let's go to Max in Garden City with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Max.
Good morning, Kevin. I'd like to address 2 points, if I might. The first being the FBI, the second being the food tax. It doesn't seem to you that the FBI has had so many decades of liberal contamination that they really need to be just completely reorganized, sack a whole bunch of them, start bringing in fresh blood, do what they did under the Obama administration, and start bringing in people with a lot more care. Obama had the FBI recruiting people, and they cannot tell me that politics wasn't considered when they brought people in or brought people up the ladder. We need them to be an apolitical group. They're not. Right now, they're the goons and henchmen of the last administration. And they're even going after my president. It's wrong. They need to be torn down and built up.
I agree.
The other item is this doggone food tax. You said you're going to hold people's feet to the fire. I need you to keep doing it. I shop for other people, folks who can't get out of the house. And I look at their grocery bills. And some of these people are making $700 a month. You know what? They're paying taxes on their food. I can't think of a more insidious tax than the tax that taxes the very food that goes in your mouth. Why don't they tax the air we breathe? It has to stop. It has to roll back.
Well, if they get the new Green Deal, they will. But, here's something, and we will continue to hold these folks accountable. They just, increased education funding by 6%. I've got to find that story, and we'll talk about it.
And where's that money going to? Do you know what percentage of the Ada School District is administration?
Well, that's the dirty little secret in education in this state for years.
Is that people, they're paying over half the school budget, well over half, to administrators.
Right, that's the dirty little secret. Is that
so our teachers are unqualified?
It's top heavy.
You're being very nice. It's criminal. It's criminal. Our education system stinks. Our kids are graduating ignorant. Our teachers, some try, some are dedicated. God bless them, hardworking. A whole bunch are unqualified, and they're all underpaid. I just say sack half the administration. Give the teachers a 10% pay raise and be a little more strict about how they teach. Go for a results-driven education system. But just me, I still want to harp about the food tax. So please, everybody, you're grinding the faces of the very poor. You're just slapping everybody. It is a matter of principle that anybody, even Caesar, did not tax the food people ate. There we go. I feel better now.
Thank you, Max. God bless.
Take care, bud.
And by the way, looks like JFAC approved from the front page of the paper today $110 million additional dollars in education funding, an increase of about 6.1%. On the other hand, folks, no repeal of the grocery tax. I've had a few legislators reach out to me. I need to get back with them on this. We will continue to take your phone calls. Here is more from former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, that says he's a victim of the Trump presidency.
That was the big picture issue that we were trying to find our way through.
I should mention the Department of Justice and Rosenstein in particular have said that these accounts are factually inaccurate. And that brings me actually to an issue that you have. You were fired from the FBI.
In other words, Rosenstein, who said he would wear a wire, and we'll have more of this coming up, said you're a liar, Andrew McCabe. Your thoughts?
FBI, and you were fired after the Inspector General of the Department of Justice found that you had displayed a lack of candor, which I think is FBI speak for not telling the truth, about a story that appeared in the Wall Street Journal and whether or not you authorized a leak of material that was in that article. Why should anyone believe you when you were fired from the FBI for lying?
Yeah, there's two reasons. Before the president started publicly attacking me, I enjoyed a 21-year career in the FBI at every level an agent can serve within the FBI, and with absolutely not a single blemish on that career. Second reason, I believe very strongly I was fired because of the steps we've just discussed. I was fired because I opened a case against the President of the United States.
I read the Inspector General's report. That suggests the Inspector General is in on it and firing you for basically making up a pretext to fire you. Is that what you're suggesting?
Here's what I can tell you. I read that report very closely myself. I've been writing and reading.
So, Mr. McCabe, is everybody in on it? Coming up, Pete from Mountain Home, David from Nampa, and you responding to the coup against the president. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Reading investigative reports for over 20 years, and that report was not like anything I have ever read before. An investigative report includes all of the evidence. It includes all of the information, not just those facts that support the conclusion that you'd like to draw. So I have big problems with that report. I disagree with the conclusions they drew, and that is something that I'll be raising in a civil lawsuit that I'll be bringing against the Department of Justice.
It was quite detailed, and it states that you displayed this lack of candor, as it puts it, on 4 different occasions. I mean, that's not just, well, we didn't understand, I'm not sure, I was distracted. That's 4 separate occasions in which the Inspector General says, you were not forthcoming. You did not tell the truth.
Yeah, and I would love to walk through every one of the points that I have for each one of those things that they've said in that report, but I can't do that with you this morning.
Right, of course not. You're going to sue the Department of Justice. Good morning. This is Andrew McCabe from the Today Show, which will air later on in the morning. You're listening to Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. We've uncovered the coup, and Andrew McCabe is singing like the songbird against the President of the United States. Also, the President declaring a national emergency. You've got several states suing him already. So much for saving America. Wow. Talk about waking up with a smack in the face. Pete in Mountain Home joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pete.
Kevin, I'm at the point where I think the FBI should simply be disbanded as an agency. Go back to Richard Jewell, the Olympic bombing, where they decided he was guilty. And it turns out it was not him, but they did everything they could to destroy his life. You look at the reports about the FBI lab reports being faked to get the conclusion they want. You look at this, what was basically an attempted coup to remove the constitutionally elected president of the United States, and the way they were supporting Hillary. I am sure there are some good FBI agents out there, and I would say, okay, let them go to work for the Federal Marshal Service or other federal agencies, but I do not think you can fix the FBI as an agency. I think the rot at the top is too deep, and I think their entire attitude of, well, whatever we do is the law, I think you can't fix that. Get rid of them.
What do you make of McCabe trying to get some sympathy and selling a book?
The guy is a flat-out proven liar, and anyone who wants to buy a book full of lies, I guess, can buy that. But the man, there's no shame there. I mean, that business, like you said, he is either a complete idiot or he's lying again about not knowing about the affair.
Well, that's what I find trouble to believe. These guys were very blatant, very open, and either you knew about it or you're the biggest dope the FBI ever hired.
Yeah, and then I didn't lie to Congress. I didn't, give me a break, okay?
Exactly,
I am glad he's published a book, though, because you know, we now can call him up again. The Senate committees can call him in and have him testify, and they have what he said in the book, and they can say, "Gee, now earlier to us you said so and so. That was a lie then, or is your book a lie?" I'm sorry. You know, I know there's good FBI agents out there, but if I were them, I would try to work for another agency. That agency is it simply should be eliminated.
Pete, thank you for the call.
Thank you, sir.
580-5436, 580-KIDO. 6:24 our time for traffic and weather together.
I'm just Channel 7's Larry Gebert.
All right, Larry, if you say so. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's go to David in Nampa on the coup. Good morning, David.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. My goodness. I say this a lot. Every time I hear we live in a divided nation, I always want to say, I'm sorry, has my eye been hurting your fist again? This is another example. This is an example of, do you remember last month the kids from that school, and what did the one reporter say? Look, he's white, he's male, he's Catholic, and he's wearing a MAGA hat. And that gave him a punchable face. Remember that?
Yep.
And that came up a lot. You know, we just had this guy who was a proven liar, you know, Smollett or whatever. What if somebody had taken out vengeance on somebody wearing a MAGA hat? You know, how many people have lied about that? But this is a deeper thing. It's, you know, G.K. Chesterton, speaking of Catholics, said that the problem with people not believing in God is not that they'll believe in nothing. It's worse. It's they'll start believing in anything. And Dennis Prager says, a more modern thinker, there is a God-shaped hole in everyone's heart, and they will fill that hole with God, or they will fill it with something else, and that will be their God. That's what happens when God dies. The principal difference between liberals and conservatives is we think they're wrong. They think we're scum. Remember the insurance policy that Strzok and Lisa Page, whatever, had? You know, in case Donald Trump wins, we have to have an insurance policy. Remember that?
Yes.
They think we're scum. Remember Chuck Schumer, who said, oh, you better not criticize the intelligence. They can get you 6 ways from Sunday. Remember the great nothing burger that was with the prostitutes? I'm sorry. You just said the president serves at the behest of the intelligence. Okay, that's like some third world poop hole that I don't want to live in, where, you know, the army and the whatever, they decide who's the president, and maybe he's a general, and maybe he's their puppet or whatever. Wow. That went over like nothing, you know? And I love the news lady who said, and you hear that little hitch in her get along? She almost said the L word, lie, but she didn't quite drop the L bomb. But, because, you know, she's trying to do her job, but she thinks Donald Trump is scum too. I mean, you know, it's part of the divide. It's what happens when God dies. Then, you know, your God becomes the left, and it becomes an idol. And by the way, that's, you know, now we're talking R.C. Sproul, who said there's crass idolatry, which is kneeling down to a stone or a metal or wood. And then there's other idolatry, and anything that puts you between you and God. And I'm reminded of the line, those who worship God must worship God in spirit and worship God in truth. No, that's just words. I mean it. But again, if there's no God, all is permitted. I know it sounds silly, but yeah, they hate Trump. They hate his supporters. They hate the fact that their girl lost. I mean, look at the dirty dossier, a.k.a. the pee-pee papers. Remember that? Yep. That was entirely cooked up. And why don't we do the poison fruit doctrine at some point? Since that was fruit from a poison tree, even if you found Russia collusion, and how many leaks have come out of Washington? And remember the report that came out this week, there's nothing? And you notice how the prostitutes can't talk about that? 2 years, and there's nothing. How many times did liars for the Clintons 20 years ago say, $50 million, and you didn't get no convictions? He got 15 convictions. Ken Starr got 15 convictions, and Clinton spokesholes went out and said $50 million and you didn't get any convictions.
David, we appreciate it. Great facts there by David. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO.
McCabe says he discussed with the FBI's top lawyer, James Baker, and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein about possibly invoking the 25th Amendment to remove the president and even secretly recording President Trump over concerns about his motives with Russia and U.S. policy.
Discussion of the 25th Amendment was simply Rod raised the issue and discussed it with me in the context of thinking about how many other cabinet officials might support such an effort.
According to Baker, Rosenstein also told him that some cabinet officials were also ready to remove Trump from office.
Cabinet officials were ready to remove Trump. This is his own cabinet. Much more on the coup, your reaction. We've got a lot. We've got a target-rich show today. It is Tuesday. You're listening to Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM. 580 AM. Looking for you to join the conversation. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
Looking forward to hearing from you next. But first, KIDO Talk Radio is your home for Fox News on the radio. Let's go live to London, from the Treasure Valley to London, England. Fox News Radio Simon Owen joins us with the very latest concerning President Trump wanting to take back ISIS fighters. Apparently a chilly reception. Simon, good morning.
Hey, Kevin. Good morning.
Good to have you with us here in the great state of Idaho. So the president wants Europe to take the ISIS fighters. They say, not in my neighborhood. What's the details?
Yes, exactly. And in these remarks, President Trump has hit upon a conundrum that's been facing European countries for a few years now. We've known for a long time that ISIS was a multinational force made up of people from all over the world. Thousands of people traveled from dozens of different countries to join its attempt to form a caliphate in the Middle East. And since then, many of them have been killed, some of them have fled, and some of them have been captured. And it's those captured people that we're talking about today. And President Trump's comments focus on what he says is 800 people who we think are being held by Kurdish forces in northeastern Syria. These are Kurdish forces that are backed by the United States. And for a long time, it's not seen that there's been a particular rush about figuring out what to do with these people. They are in prison, they're locked up. But President Trump's surprise decision in December to pull U.S. troops out of Syria has suddenly thrown this question into a harsh spotlight, because the Kurds are now saying that if they don't have American support anymore and they are attacked, they can't guarantee that these fighters wouldn't escape. And President Trump says the risk is they could permeate back home to European countries where they could carry out terrorist attacks.
It is odd, though, Simon, when you bring this up, how many people from, whether it's North America or Europe, that may traditionally or at least stereotypically not have any type of relation to these ISIS fighters or their cause, all of a sudden get radicalized and join the band.
Well, I mean, this was the really striking thing with the rise of ISIS when it happened, was the way it was able to radicalize people with some very slick propaganda efforts, and also harnessing of social media and other corners of the internet. There was an extraordinary recruitment drive. And yes, I mean, it really was dozens of countries that saw people travel all that way, and many were from Europe. You know, Europe's police agency reckons that 5,000 plus Europeans went to fight in Syria and Iraq. About 1,500 of them have returned. Well, that leaves 3,500. Most of them were, President Trump named Britain, France, and Germany, and he's right that most of them are from Britain, France, Germany, and also Belgium. So those are the main countries. But yes, a lot of people traveled a fair distance to go there, and there's now quite a lot of people who it has to be decided what is done with them next.
Boy, we'll see how that plays out. Is there anybody that's pro-America in this case? And I'm phrasing it wrong, but might be a little warm to bringing these folks into their country?
There are some ministers, certainly the Belgian government and also the government of Slovakia, not a power player in European politics, but, a voice at the table nonetheless, who said that, the Belgian justice minister said control is better than total freedom. So the argument goes that at least you'd know where they were if they were brought home. But other European countries, certainly Britain, France and Germany, have a policy where they say that they want these people to be prosecuted in the Middle East. And there's a couple of reasons why they don't want them back. Firstly, it's not popular with voters. All of these countries have experienced deadly ISIS attacks in recent years, so the prospect of bringing hundreds of people potentially still devoted to that ideology does not go down well. But second, there are real concerns in Europe about what they would do with them, because it's all very well saying, well, they joined ISIS, locked them up, but you have to prove that. And Syria is a war zone, and there is very little chance, if not zero chance, of any compelling evidence emerging from that country, which would actually be good enough quality to stand up in a European court and secure a conviction. So these governments are worried that they could bring these people home and then they could walk free. If not immediately, then shortly after serving perhaps a short prison sentence for a relatively minor offense. The prospect of actually convicting them of terrorist murder or war crimes is negligible.
Simon, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, our great friend Simon Owen joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio.
We talked about why the president had insisted on firing the director and whether or not he was thinking about the Russia investigation and did that impact his decision. And in the context of that conversation, the Deputy Attorney General offered to wear a wire into the White House.
And there you have it, Andrew McCabe from 60 Minutes. More of your calls. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go to Hank in Boise. Hank, thank you for your patience. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning. I would like to comment about Max's thing about administrative costs in education. You can take the example of the Meridian School District. You start in 1990, when the boom in Meridians really got going, to up to nearly 30 years ago as of today, and the percentage of administrative costs in the Meridian School District as percentage of the money of their budget more than doubled in that period of time from 1990 to 2019. That's where, as we're stating, Boise Independent School District, you're talking about close to 50% of their overall budget in administrative costs. And waste like this.
Sure, but let's right.
education.
I understand that, but we're talking about Andrew McCabe, and
okay.
I do hear that you.
I'll go into Andrew McCabe
right.
real quickly. This is the case where when the FBI was originally founded in 1908, the argument was that the dangers of such an organization, and I think I mentioned this over the phone in an earlier conversation several months ago about Senator Foraker of Ohio, who opposed the creation of the FBI, was that such an agency could easily be politicized and corrupted by politicization. This is something he said more than 110 years ago, and it's turning out to be quite true. I think that any centralization of law like this, or law enforcement authority like this, is by its nature dangerous, especially when you have concentrated power in Washington, D.C. to this certain extent. I think that Pete's comment that they maybe need to take some of these services and disperse them into the United States Marshal Service, I think may have some merit. I think that the time to seriously consider the abolishment of the FBI in its current
right. But if you did that, what would you do? That'd be a huge disruption, and it would put our country in jeopardy, would it not? Well,
we got overlapping security right now. I mean, overlapping in terms of your intelligence committee. Intelligence. I don't know. The problem is how do you stop or prevent the kind of corruption that took place with the Democrats? Anything the Democrats touch, they politicize. I mean, to them, everything is about power and control. How do you stop that? How do you stop that on a practical basis where they're not a danger to the country or the danger to the freedom of our institutions or planning coups d'etats against the president of the United States?
Here's another one. Here's another one. I'm reading you remember, you heard of this guy, Cliff Sims, right? The guy that just left the White House?
No, okay. No, I know.
Okay, well, Cliff Sims is a guy, I've known him for a few years. He, a millennial, just wrote the book, Team of Vipers. And I'm reading this book, and it's talking about, life inside the bubble of the first 500 days of the administration. And you had a lot of people within the FBI, or not the FBI, the RNC, that were not down with President Trump, were not down with the deplorables, and did everything they could to undermine the president. And then you have Paul Ryan. We talk about when the Republicans had both the House and the Senate, and you had a lot of squishy, probably now retired Republicans that didn't want to jump on the Trump train. You can tell me that with a Republican House, a Republican Senate, a Republican president, we couldn't have gotten $30, $40, or even $50 billion for the wall. Instead, we went after Obamacare, and that failed miserably. The tax breaks, now people are complaining that they're not getting a big refund. Well, when you take less taxes throughout the year, you're not going to get the big refund at the end of the year. Hank, it's crazy, but a lot of this is that no one has the president's back.
Well, it comes down to K Street, the area of the lobbying, and especially with people like Ryan in the House, Paul Ryan in the House, the Chamber of Commerce money that went into House races was more important to him than necessarily doing what his voters is. And there's a certain disconnect between the Republican professionals and their voters. I think that a lot of particularly your so-called rhino or more liberal Republicans down there, I think look down their nose at the base of the average Republican voter looking at them. I mean, they share a lot of, let's say, we were talking about Strzok and Page talking about those people, smelly Kmart people. Well, a lot of the Republican elites feel the same way.
Very good point. Hank, thank you for the call. 580-5436. 580-KIDO. By the way, no, we're not going to drop this top story. He's back.
I think the current occupant of the White House is an embarrassment to our country. I think he is a pathological liar every day. He is telling one lie or another. And it gives me no pleasure to say that. But I also think he is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe.
And that's coming from a socialist. Bernie's back. Back again. Bernie's back. Tell a friend. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller in the morning on your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. And blessed to be with you. So Bernie Sanders is back. Andrew McCabe is singing the blues. We've uncovered a coup, and it's not even 7 a.m. Great to start our day on the right side with all of us here. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Back to Andrew McCabe, then we'll take more of your phone calls. Here is Phil Keating from Fox News, basically breaking down what Andrew McCabe was about.
McCabe says he discussed with the FBI's top lawyer, James Baker, and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein about possibly invoking the 25th Amendment to remove the president and even secretly recording President Trump over concerns about his motives with Russia and U.S. policy.
Discussion of the 25th Amendment was simply Rod raised the issue and discussed it with me in the context of thinking about how many other cabinet officials might support such an effort.
And according to Baker, Rosenstein also told him that some cabinet officials were also ready to remove Trump from office.
There we have it from Phil Keating, Fox News on KIDO Talk Radio. Now listen to Andrew McCabe.
We talked about why the president had insisted on firing the director and whether or not he was thinking about the Russia investigation and did that impact his decision. And in the context of that conversation, the Deputy Attorney General offered to wear a wire into the White House.
Your reaction is next, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We go to Tom Munns, TomMunns.com with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio.
And the dog and pony show continues, huh, Kevin?
It's a crazy way to start the day, Tom.
Yeah, I was really into what you guys were talking about, you and Hank, and talking about the FBI, and you thought maybe if we abolished them, it would be like, oh no, what should we do? We got to look at several things. One of them is, why was the FBI created? And I believe it was to internally investigate the federal government. Number two, it's a bureaucracy. Number three, it was created during Theodore Roosevelt. He was a progressive already, which tells you that they love the administrative state. And then we can fast forward and looking at what we've got today. If we've got an investigative agency, this is proof that the government morphs and becomes big and abusive. Not only does it define terrorists or listen to hate groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center that calls Americans, terrorists, but these groups here, they were supposed to be investigative only. Now they're armed, and they were supposed to operate out of the 10 square miles of D.C. Now they've got they're moving everybody from Quantico, or 80% of the FBI, to Pocatello. I drive by that place every day, and I'm looking at the federalization of Idaho. Not only the federalization of Idaho, but the federalization of the United States. So when you go back and you look at, okay, what is the checks and balances, because I've been studying the system a little bit when I was talking with some of the law enforcement and stuff, is, okay, we'll look at the Honduran invasion for a sec, just as an example, right? So we've got a problem coming up from the border. The border's open. What are we going to do? Well, a lot of people say, well, we should apply for a national disaster. Wrong. You're going to appeal to the federal government for the solution to the problem they started, right? So then you back off and you look at that and you're like, okay, so then what do you do? Okay, we're going to call them the National Guard. Okay, well, the National Guard is overseas, so what are we going to do? Bring them home now? They're already spread too thin as it is, and I would actually question the legitimacy of them anyway, constitutionally. And then my whole point in talking about this is nobody knows what kinds of checks and balances have been abolished. We had a state guard once. Every state had a state guard. That was the organized militia. The organized militia is the one that kept from chaos happening, and it was the last line of defense, or first line of defense, depending on what side of the fence you're on, that actually defended communities. And then, of course, you had the unorganized militia, which was every able-bodied, blah, 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 citizen. So there are the checks and balances, and the reliance on the average citizen to appeal to the federal government, or to appeal to the government practically in any way, shape, or form outside of the Constitution is a nanny state. Why don't we grow up and put our big boy pants on and start acting like Americans and start saying, you know what? We're going to start taking this country back. We're going to start exercising the principles of self-governance, the loving God as number first, and then loving our neighbor as the second greatest commandment. I mean, the FBI isn't really needed, and if it is, why doesn't it go back to the investigative position that it had in 1908? And instead of policing its own agency, why is it now targeting American citizens like me?
You're saying the FBI is targeting you?
It's targeting everybody like us, Kevin. Are you kidding me? They even admitted it. I mean, this is not so. I'm actually with Hank. If we're going to try to get our country back, and we're going to try to get our freedom back, we might want to consider talking about this.
Edward Snowden was right. Tom, thank you. Sorry, ready to go to the top of the hour. Traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave.